So welcome to the Zero Waste Design Online community call titled Zero Waste Design for the Home, Sewing and Maker Community. We're so glad you could join us. And as I said, if you've just joined us as we're waiting for everyone else to arrive at the call, we're really interested in finding out where you're from. So please share in the chat. And it's just lovely knowing that we have people joining us from all over the globe. So welcome. So to start with, we're actually just interested in finding out how you identify yourself. When I was planning this workshop, I was just kind of thinking about, how do I communicate who this workshop is actually for? Is it, home sewers or makers? It's really important to us that we use the correct term to identify this part of our community. And although we can make assumptions based on our experience, we want to know directly from you how you identify yourself as someone who makes their own clothes. So I'm going to put up a poll and give everyone another minute or so to join the call before we properly get started. So we've got 72 people here at the moment. Welcome. If you've just joined us, lovely to have you here. So I'm going to launch that poll now. So you should have the poll coming up on your page there. Looking just like that. If you can answer that, that would be great. Okay. Great. So I'm going to move on to the next slide then. Just some practical information about the workshop today. As you've arrived in the workshop, you've been muted just to avoid background noises during the presentation. But when we get to the Q&A time, or the kind of show and tell, or inviting people to share their zero waste makes, obviously you can feel free to unmute yourself and talk that way. And if you have any questions at any point, you can also feel free to put your questions into the chat as well, and our team will do our best to answer your questions as we go. We advise you to set the side-by-side display mode just for the kind of best presentation, and feel free to add, as I said, your questions in the chat. And this community call is also going to be recorded and will be made available on our website after the call. The main presentation today is going to be 1 hour, but we are adding an extra 30 minutes kind of bonus time on the end. We wanted to fit a lot in, and we recognize it's going to extend a bit beyond an hour. So we will get the main content in the call today to 1 hour, but if you want to stick around for the extra kind of 30-minute bonus, we're going to be looking at some extra examples of zero waste sewing patterns that you might be interested in. We're going to talk to you a bit about our new Slack forum where you can kind of join the community and share, and what else? And we'll have this kind of show and tell and Q&A time in that period as well. So just an outline for the main community call here. We've got a basic introduction to start with and an update from us at Zero Waste Design Online. We're going to look at the context behind kind of zero waste. Why zero waste? Why is it important? And then we've got 5 presenters today. We've got Emily Klug, and if I'm not pronouncing your name right, Emily, you can fix that later when you present your work. And we've got McBrien Evans, Bevan O'Daly, Birgitta Helmersson, and Ellie from Slow Sewed, and then obviously, as I mentioned, the 30-minute bonus at the end. So we just wanted to talk a bit about what community means to us at Zero Waste Design Online. Community is a place where we believe that everyone belongs. It's a place where we can come together and learn from one another. It's important to us that there's no hierarchy in this community space. Everyone is welcome, accepted, and valued for their knowledge, skills, and experience equally. We're all here to learn and grow together, and everyone's experience is completely valued. Our hope is that these community calls will provide a space to connect, to share, and discuss current topics with inspiring individuals from across the world. So I'll just introduce myself. My name is Cassandra Boulanger. I am one of the co-founders of Zero Waste Design Online. I am the founder of the Stitchery Studio, where I've been teaching home sewers how to make their own clothes and developing sewing patterns for just over 10 years now. I'm also the founding member of Sustainable Fashion Scotland. I'm Canadian, originally from Western Canada, and now I am based in Glasgow, Scotland. And I'm also going to just let the other team members, founders of Zero Waste Design Online, also introduce themselves. So I'll pass over to Mylène.
Hi everyone, glad to be here. So yeah, I'm Mylène, one of the co-founder of the collective, and I'm French. I'm a designer, pattern maker, and also consultant, mostly for the industry world. I try to implement zero waste design or minimal waste design into the industry. And I also provide some sewing patterns, zero waste sewing pattern as well.
Danielle, would you like to share next?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Danielle Elsener, another founding member of Zero Waste Design Online. I run Decode, which is the studio that I work under for multiple things around the world of zero waste design, mostly focused on education, creating the tools to create zero waste patterns, and working with industry as well. And it's super exciting. There's just so much going on in this world, which is really great. I'm glad to have you all here.
Great, thanks. And then we'll have Holly share.
Hey, hello everybody. So my name's Holly McQuillan. I'm a zero waste design researcher. I'm also an author. I co-wrote Zero Waste Fashion Design with Timo Rissanen, and we're currently working on a second edition. I'm co-founder with these amazing women for Zero Waste Design Online, and I'm so happy that you've joined us tonight.
Great, thanks. So on the back of that, we wanted to talk just a bit about our kind of collective ambition and why we started Zero Waste Design Online. So what we're looking to do is create a global online zero waste design community. We endeavor to fill the lack of educational resources around zero waste design methods and processes and ways of making. We want to put all our collective knowledge in one place and connect with others. And when we talk about collective knowledge, that means your knowledge as well. So that's kind of bringing it all in one place. We're looking to transform the fashion industry and maker community through open dialogue and garment construction, pattern cutting, design methods, and innovative use of technology. I also thought I would share a bit about our recent project development posts that we shared on Instagram and our blog. We endeavor always to be transparent in every way that we can be. And we also want to share our experience as we build this online platform. So at the start of January, we decided to start back in the new year by reflecting on our vision for Zero Waste Design Online and how and where each of us as co-founders fit into the bigger picture. So it helped us direct our efforts in the right place as we move forward. If you're interested in learning more about this process and sharing your feedback, because we really, really do value your feedback as part of this, we want to know your thoughts and your ideas as well. You can visit our Instagram or blog posts and share there. We're also going to be sharing all of this info with you through our Slack channel, which we're going to be talking more about later in the event. Okay, so based on that kind of project development that we did, we kind of mapped out the next 3 months and what we'd be working on. So just to share with you a little bit about what that is, very excited that we're going to be registering as an association, a not-for-profit so a non-for-profit organization in France. We've created a forum through Slack, which we've mentioned, which is going to allow the community to kind of connect more with each other. We're working on new workshop formats and looking at kind of developing our e-learning platform, which is something that we've been talking a lot about. Mylène soon will be offering Klug 3D training in French, and Klug 3D, if you've not heard of it before, is a computer-aided design software which allows you to digitally develop designs and sample designs. And so for zero waste design, it's really great because it kind of cuts out the physical toiling or sampling process. And so Mylène will be offering that training and more info to come soon on that. And then our own Danielle Elsener is going to be offering a workshop called 15% Experimental Design Thinking, and that we'll have more information in the coming weeks about that as well. And then yours truly will be working on our first sewing pattern. We're looking at developing our own sewing patterns for zero waste design online. And then from that, also our first workshop for the home sewing community. So we're very excited about things to come, and we've been very busy. So I am just going to launch the next poll. And Mylène, can you maybe look at launching the next poll? Great. Okay. So, oh, sorry. Here we go. So the next poll is us just wanting to find a bit of information from you about what you'd be interested in seeing from us pattern-wise. So we've got some different patterns here that we're looking to develop, and we want to know what is the first pattern you'd like us to work on. So we have the overture dress, which is number 1, which is a pattern that I designed myself. And then we have the button-up shirt as number 2, and shorts, which were designed by Danielle Elsener. They're both unisex patterns. We have number 4, the spiral trousers, which were designed by Holly. And then also the arc dress and top, and the crop top and long shirt as well are Holly's designs. And then lastly, the patchwork dresses, which was a zero waste design that I developed during my master's in fashion and textiles. And that has, I kind of added that extra, and that little digital drawing there is actually from Klug 3D. So that's an example of what Klug 3D is, but it just kind of shows the variation with sleeves as well. So I can't see the poll, but I'm guessing that you can all see the poll at the moment. And Mylène, do you want to share what the polling results are looking like at the moment? Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see it from your side, Cass?
I can't see it coming up, but maybe everyone else can see it just because of the view that I'm currently presenting in.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Holly. Okay, great. And do we want to share the results of that poll, or have we done that already?
Yeah, it's done.
What is the result? Tell me, I'm interested to know.
So 26% for the spiral trousers, and then the button up shirt. Oh, French. Yeah, and then the overture dress.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that information. We'll definitely take that into account as we start developing our patterns. That's great. Okay, so next we just wanted to give you a bit of kind of context behind zero waste design. So as many of us know, fashion is one of the most polluting industries. 80% of a garment's environmental impact is generated by the fabric. 60 billion square meters of fabric is wasted annually. 10% of that is recycled, 8% of that is reused, 25% is incinerated, and 57% ends up in landfill, which is obviously disheartening. And what we're trying to address is this very issue. So so an average of 15% of the fabric is wasted at the cutting stage in the fashion industry. So this is an example from the industry here that shows you the kind of waste left over. So this it just gives an example. Often, if you're a home sewer, the way that you cut, you might not end up with a kind of grid of fabric in this way, but it's kind of representative. It's kind of helpful to just see that laid out. So I wanted to take a simple t-shirt and kind of look at this and dig in a bit deeper. So although 15% is the industry average cutting floor waste, when we look closer at the industry, there are garments that waste much more. So as I said, this is an example of a t-shirt made in the fashion industry, where even though we lay out multiple sizes in one pattern layout, which is what's often done in industry to make it more efficient in waste. And just so you know as well, this is called a marker in the industry. So we call it a pattern layout, when we talk about home sewing, but it's called a marker in the industry. But in this layout, we actually have up to 25% waste. And if we cut out the same type of garment from home, as you can see in the next slide, you can see that the percentage of waste is still incredibly high. And in my experience, that waste created by home sewers is much higher per garment than it is in the fashion industry. The fashion industry overall does create more waste, but this is still an issue we need to address in the home sewing industry. So how is waste generated by indie sewing or indie pattern companies? We've already talked about wasteful pattern cutting layouts, but there's also waste created in other ways as well, which I'll discuss here. So one of the ways is pattern companies recommending to buy more fabric that's actually necessary. I can understand the fear of going to the fabric store and worrying you're not going to have enough fabric. But if we can be more, as pattern designers, be more efficient and have more confidence in the quantity of fabric recommended on the pattern, this would really help to reduce waste. Another way is by developing patterns that don't fit the average body, because some pattern companies, and particularly the kind of big four pattern companies, Birgitta McCall's, these kind of companies, their size charts are often based on outdated anthropometric data and don't actually fit the average body today. So for example, their bust size is made for a B cup often, which we know is not the average. And so when pattern companies create patterns from these size charts, it's going to fit less bodies and therefore create more waste if you're going to make it a pattern from from an ill-fitting starting point, I guess. So I just wanted to share this quote from Liz Ricketts, who recently did a class for the Slow Factory, which I highly recommend checking out, the Slow Factory. Again, we'll put this up in the chat, and we'll talk about it also in our Slack channel, but she recently did a workshop called Fashion and Waste. And she said, we produce more than we can consume, we consume more than we can use, and we waste. And so we know that consumption is a problem. And even in the home sewing world, consumption of fabric can be a problem as well, like buying more fabric than we actually need. We all know we've got a bit of a fabric hoard, and it's something that we could all work on and reduce. So even finding ways of not buying new things as a home sewer can improve that kind of waste. So I guess what I'm pointing at is that we all have to take a level of responsibility when it comes to the generation of waste that we're creating. So other ways that waste is created for home sewers is unworn garments to do with ill fit. So even if you are starting with a pattern that maybe is based on a more updated size chart, if you don't know how to fit that garment to your own body, then you might end up with a garment that doesn't fit very well, and therefore you don't wear it. So learning how to fit can be very important. Also, unfinished garments, we all have those lying around, starting something and not finishing it. That can lead to waste. Twalls or muslins, so creating calico samples to check fit, that we often, again, don't use afterwards. And there's lots of solutions to this, like, maybe dyeing the calico toile afterwards and a different color and being able to wear it, or making wearable toiles. I always encourage my students just to make initially something wearable, and even if there's some kind of tweaks or it doesn't fit you, it might fit someone else. But again, yeah, so that's kind of how waste is generated by us home sewers. Okay, so what is zero waste fashion design? I guess we're kind of getting to the point here. The garment I'm actually wearing is an example of a zero waste design. This is Birgitta Helmersson's zero waste crop top, which I just made last week, and I do still have some basting stitches in it, I will admit. Trying to sew quickly to wear for tonight. But to give you the actual definition, or one of my favorite definitions, which I got out of Holly McQuillan's book, is zero waste fashion design addresses inefficiency in fabric use by reframing waste as an opportunity to explore the magic of making clothes. So that is my bit of the presentation, but I'm going to pass over now to Emily. We've got, as I said, 5 presenters that are going to talk through their own kind of zero waste journey. And so I'm going to hand over to Emily. And just a reminder for the presenters, just let me know that you want me to go to the next slide by saying next or next slide. So Emily, welcome. Emily, you might be on mute. Oh, there you are. There you are.
Yes, I was on mute. Okay, hi, my name is Emily Klug, and I live in Madison, Wisconsin with my husband and our 4 kids. And I've been a maker, you know, for as long as I can remember, but really probably in the past like 10 or so years, I've really been focusing more on garment making for myself, because I really enjoy being able to wear my own clothes. It's always a real joy when you can look down and realize everything you're wearing is, you know, something that you made. So one of the things that about 5 years ago, I started really focusing on Goldfinch Limited. And one thing that I, you know, after learning a lot more about the impacts of fast fashion on, you know, the environment and the people, you know, like it really had an impact on me and me thinking about how I was going to move forward with the work that I was doing and really think about the materials that I was using. And then also just in my own home sewing, all those pictures that you showed just past of, you know, all the waste, you know, I have bags of all of the stuff because I want to be able to use it or like attempt to find a way to use it. But it's like you don't always get around to it. So it becomes this like burden. So one things that I've really thought about and started exploring more is zero and low waste sewing patterns and how those can really change your practice sewing at home. So next, you can see how I started working is I use a lot of upcycled materials. I go to the thrift store or the craft reuse stores that would sell fabric that then I could, you know, transform into new garments. And that required a lot of time and effort in terms of I would then use natural dyes on the fabric to try to transform them and use hand stitching on them too, because my goal was attempting to make it look like it wasn't just bought, you know, from the thrift store and redone. So that's how I really got started. But next. I also was able to really use a lot of fabric cutoffs from sustainable clothing brands that they, you know, on Instagram and stuff, they'd be like, I've got all these scraps, I don't know what to do with them, you know, does anybody want them? You know, and so I would take them and, you know, experiment with different ways to piece them together to make whole cloth. Like the blue tunic dress there, that was all cutoffs that then I pieced back together to make a whole cloth out of the same fabric, and using a lot of improv piecing to make new pieces. And it's a very time consuming process, and it's, you know, something I really enjoy doing, but it takes a lot of effort. And so in this process, I, you know, realized I needed to find a way to maybe find an avenue that was more accessible to other people to like learn how to do too. And so then that has brought me to zero waste sewing patterns. Next. In the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I have been exploring zero waste patterns for myself and using them in my other patchwork pieces. But one thing that I think, going back to that quote that you had just posted, one thing I thought was really is magical to me is that you can take a, you know, a rectangle of fabric, you know, lay it out and cut it into, and in my case, I use a lot of, you know, squares and rectangles and triangles, and you cut them all up into tiny pieces and then put it all back together and you've got something you can wear, which is pretty magical to me. You know, like you spend a lot of money on your fabric, you spend a lot of time on it, and it's really nice that you don't have any waste when you're done. And so that to me has been a real joy, and I've wanting to try to make it more accessible and more knowledge to the you know, the general public home sewer to see that this is something that you can, you know, do too. So next. One thing that I try to consider just in everything that I make, because I want to make things, if I'm going to spend my time doing it, I want to make sure that I'm going to wear it, you know. So what's going to be comfortable for me to wear? Not only just comfortable, but like makes me feel good, makes me, I can chase my kids around and do all the things that I've got to do on a day-to-day basis and feel good. But beyond comfort, I think one thing that in the zero waste sewing and in design process that really you got to think about is the size ranges, and you've got to think about that stuff from the like the very beginning, and not just like come up with a design and then later be like, okay, well maybe I can grade this up and down. We'll see what we can get. So that's been an interesting challenge to definitely think about when working on the designs. So next. I think that one thing that can be done for home sewers when we're thinking about zero waste design is to take staple designs or staple concepts of, like the tunic dress that you showed with the ruffle on the bottom. That's a dress that you would typically see maybe from a pattern company, but to reimagine it as zero waste. And there's a lot of opportunities out there to try to, flex those creative muscles to see what else we can make. And then I think another thing that's really been sticking out to me in the last little bit is trying to make garments that are flexible for body, like natural body changes, not just for a variety of sizes of people, but for the natural changes that happen within your body. Because if you're going to take the time to make something, well, just in general, so that there's not as much waste, is like having something that will last a little bit, so that if in the winter you gain a little bit of weight, by the summer it's still going to fit you, or just things like that, to try to think about things beyond just making it for right this minute. Next. I guess just a little bit about my process and the things that I've been doing is you kind of start with a bunch of messy sketches and doing the math and trying to figure out how you can get it all fit in to what you're expecting, what you want your fabric size to be. And just like any home sewer would do, or making yourself a sample, a tool to see how it all fits. And you can kind of then go and add things. You can see there in this picture, you can't really see it in the picture, but in my recently released pattern, I ended up adding like underarm gussets to make the arms fit a little bit better. And so those are the things, you kind of add and process in during the design process. Next. I think for the home sewist, like I said before, I really want there just to be more knowledge and accessibility. I really feel that once you make one or two of these types of garments, you kind of really can see and kind of sense the concept and the formula behind them. And so then it's easy then to be like, oh, I can kind of then change it to make this thing that I need to do, or, make this hack or make it fit me this better way. It's like, once you understand the concept, like you can really run with it. And so I think that just getting it out there more, that, there are a lot of options in zero waste sewing for the home sewer will really help make it so that, more people will want to do it and feel comfortable with it and won't make them nervous. So next. And I guess just for me, like last week I released my first zero waste sewing pattern, which is the Lawrence top, and it's a tunic length and a crop top length top. And I'm already thinking about new stuff that I want to work on, but I also want to kind of show some different ways that my pattern that I just made could be hacked, and adjustments that could be done to it, so that people can see that it's more than just what you see right now. So yeah, anyway, that's where I am and where I'm at. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Emily. That's really great. Really great to see your process and your kind of thinking behind it. So we will have a Q&A kind of after everyone's done speaking as well. So if you have any questions for Emily, hold them till then, you can ask. So next we have McBrien Evans. So Kim, if you'd like to join us. And just a reminder that you might be on mute as well.
Yes, I just realized that. Also, I apologize in advance. I live in rural Canada and our internet is not the best. So if all of a sudden you see me go, I'll be back. I can usually see from my end when things are a little bit unstable, and I promise to repeat what I just said so that nobody misses anything. Next. My name is Kim McBrien Evans, and I am a knitwear designer and instructor living in Canada. And my big thing right now is sizing. Looking at sizing for different types of bodies, looking at expanding sizing of patterns, which started with knitting patterns, but now that I've decided that sewing is a good thing, I want to make sure that the patterns that I'm using as a maker are ones that are accessible to bodies like mine. Next. 68% of women in North America, and I'm sorry, this is the only statistic I've been able to find that's consistent. 68% are a size US 18 or a UK 16 or larger. We are the average. A US 18 is the average size. And so as designers, if you're not sizing using this as the median and sizing up and down from this, or if you are stopping your sizing somewhere around 16 UK or 18 US, this is how much of the market you're missing out on. So from a purely economic standpoint, I think it's really important that we think about where the bulk of sizes are in society right now. Next. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article for the Socialists specifically about solving sizing challenges in zero waste clothing. And this came about because, and it's not important who I took this workshop from, because since then I've talked to everybody involved and they've all been really receptive to talking to me about this. But I attended a zero waste workshop because I think zero waste clothing is really amazing for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is it's some of the most unique clothing that I see. Those are the patterns that I want to make for myself. And those are the patterns that I'm finding it more difficult to find in my size so that I know where to start. When I asked in this workshop about grading zero waste and about changing the sizes of zero waste clothing, I was told, or the response was, it's too difficult, or it's impossible. And I don't believe that. I believe that anytime somebody tells me something is difficult or impossible, that's an opportunity to get creative about how we're approaching things like this. So I started to do a lot of research, and I really looked at zero waste clothing patterns. And I tried to look for people who were doing it in a way that made it very easy for us as makers to expand the size or shrink the size to make things longer or shorter. Because it's not just plus sizes that are having issues, it's petite sizes. It's tall sizes that are having problems as well. And even if we learn all the skills that we need to learn how to fit sewing patterns to our bodies, if we don't have a base size that is somewhere close to us, that has one measurement that we can landmark and apply to our own bodies, then we're redrafting the pattern completely for a completely different size. And that makes it very difficult for us to support designers. Next. So I spent some time talking with a few people. I think all of you are here. Liz is here, Liz Haywood, Holly McQuillan is here, and they both very kindly engaged in conversations with me, some more casual, some more formal. And in the end, these are the primary zero waste sizing challenges that we come across. that they identified for me. One is the width of the fabric. And I think that challenge is an opportunity to change the orientation of the fabric, to take 1 or 2 or 3 of the fabrics that you have in your home stash and use those together, combine them to make a larger piece of fabric. To put together scraps and piece them together in ways that are really interesting. One of the things that I've done in recent years is I took a workshop in how to take apart thrift store clothing and put it back together in more interesting ways to create new clothing out of it. And in those workshops, we had to use every single piece of the piece of clothing that we found. We had to use the buttons, we had to use all the inside padding and lining fabrics to come up with a new design. And so I know that it's possible. You need to consider sizing from the first point of creation. Well, the opportunity is right there. You consider sizing from the first point of creation. As a knitwear designer, when I design for everything from a 30-inch chest to a 75-inch chest, 72-inch chest, sorry. I am not at either one of those ends of the range. I don't understand what it's like to be a smaller person with a small chest. I also don't understand what it's like to be in a body that has a 72-inch chest and a 78-inch hip. So I've had to learn. I've had to learn to observe. I've had to learn to look at clothing that people are wearing. I've had to look for what is flattering on different bodies. What do people look confident in when they're walking down the street? And then apply that to my own designs. So I have a set of fashion croquis that are based on real bodies. Every body is a real body, but these are real people that I know. So I understand their bodies better than I would the average person on the street. And because I have their measurements and I have them pictured in my mind, I can consider how I'm going to change the design from the smallest size to the largest size, and what extra information I need to put in to help them fit the pattern to themselves. Construction differences. If you're building a zero waste pattern for a larger range of sizes, there are going to be construction differences between sizes. So accept those. Accept those as part of the process. Accept those as part of what's going to make your garment and your pattern better fitting for each person, and more accessible to more people. And then zero waste is not always zero waste for all sizes. Accept that waste. Sometimes there is waste. Think about modifying your waste for future use. I'm currently wearing a tunic that is the very first pattern I've drafted for myself in sewing. And as I was drafting it, I was making sure that I was working with straight lines so that every piece of scrap fabric that I have is a triangle or a rectangle or a long strip. So I can collect those and make them useful in the next garment that I make, or the next project bag, or. And the smaller little pieces, I have a long history of surface design. So I have learned how to make really deep, rich, ornate fabrics out of those little tiny pieces that get left behind. If you're not taking these as opportunities, what you're telling people is if they are the actual average size or larger, you don't want to see them in your clothing. I've spoken to quite a few people who are my size and larger, and they were really interested to read my article about sizing and zero waste, because until that point, they thought zero waste clothing was not for them. And as larger people, we use more fabric, we create more waste. I think we need to think about that. I want to show you 3 examples of people who are doing this, doing things that are making it easier for us to use their patterns. Next, please. of course, there's make use. And what I love about this, Holly, is I love how there's the option to use a template that you print out that's a specific size, but there's also the opportunity to change those templates to fit you, and you give us instructions for doing that. I also love that you have little paper models so that as makers, we can learn how the pattern works on paper in a smaller form. And that's going to help inform us about what we need to do when we transfer this to paper to fit our bodies. Next. I came across this skirt, the Claire skirt by Liz Haywood, when I was just looking for an asymmetric skirt. And I was thrilled to find that it is zero waist or low waist. And I was also thrilled to find that the pattern is written for any size. You create the template based on her instructions. And not only does she give you the instructions for building the template, she tells you how the size will change, how the waistline will change the length of the skirt and by how much. And so that gives me a ton of information to dive into this pattern and learn so much about zero waist, about making clothes for myself, and about fit. And finally, I know Birgitta is going to be talking about her process later on. And what I love about Birgitta's gather dress is that before I even consider buying the pattern, I have all the information I need to know whether I'm going to be able to adapt this for my body, my size. Next. And so what's next? Designers, think about the actual size of your garments. Don't forget the people, don't forget the little people and the tall people and the fat people, because we want clothes that fit us really well too. And we are the ones that find it most difficult to find clothes that fit. Help us, give us parameters for altering the overall size of the garment, and maybe give us suggestions about what we do with the waste that's left over. Sometimes all it takes is putting a suggestion in our heads to help us really rethink how we're using our fabric. And learn how to modify patterns for plus sizes, petite or tall bodies. Not for you to modify them, but give us some instructions that let us know how we can do it ourselves. And makers, it's a partnership. It's not just on the designers. We need to meet them halfway. And for that, we need to know our bodies. We need to measure ourselves often, because body changes through the day, through the week, through the month, through the years. Measure your body, know your body, and know how you like your clothing to fit you. Because if you have the final measurements of a garment ready for you to make, then you can make decisions about how much ease you want in that garment. Modify your fabric to ensure zero waste patterns suit your body and your desired fit, and then find ways to use the waste that's created to create more unique fabrics. And finally, and this is really important because I've been doing this a long time and I'm getting really tired and I need some backup, but engage. I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't in that workshop and if I didn't start thinking and preparing myself to speak to designers about sizing. Many of those conversations have been really, really positive and have resulted in changes in the industry and changes in how we approach our making. And some of those have been really awful and horrible, but I'm focusing on the good ones. I'm focusing on the minds I've changed. I'm focusing on the minds that I know are already thinking about what's next. So join me, keep talking, keep communicating, and make your voices heard.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kim. It's just such an important conversation to have, and you've brought it so articulately, and I'm really grateful you could be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me. I really appreciate this.
And we're going to talk a little bit about socialists later in the talk, but we will direct you also to Kim's article if you're interested in reading it. I'm going to invite Bevan to join us next of Bond Textiles.
Hello, hi everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we're good.
I might be in an echoey room, full of fabric, but it doesn't look like it. So yes, hi everyone, and thank you for having me today. I'm not used to speaking, so I have notes, so if you see me looking down, you'll know. So yeah, my name is Bevan. I am Irish. I'm from Dublin originally. I moved to Glasgow 5 years ago, and I've only 6 months ago set up Bond Textiles. So my background for the last 10 years has been in conservation, textile conservation for museums. So it's not something that patterns, construction, fashion, it's not in my background like it would be in most of yours. So my background is in hand stitching and preserving, you know, antique textiles from, so, you know, 600 years ago, you know, tapestries, beds, and fashion garments. But I was really getting tired of it. So it's very sedentary. You could be working on the same object for up to a year, just sitting and losing my eyesight. Not really, but you can tell it's not, you know, it's not great for your posture or anything like that. So I really wanted something busier, and I basically just love fabric. So I don't particularly love, you know, making clothes. I don't love, you know, the construction element. I absolutely just love the fabric. So if I could just, you know, have the fabric and not have to, you know, spend 2 days making something out of it, then I would just like just drape it on me. It'll be fine. So yeah, so about 6 months ago, I opened the online shop, and I do specialize in sustainable fibers as much as I can. So sourcing from sustainable and trusted suppliers, those that have had, you know, certified credentials, and so on. And my customers are mainly home sewers and small fashion brands who don't necessarily have the cash flow to meet those minimum orders for, which can be, you know, in the hundreds for a lot of suppliers. So yeah, so that's just a little introduction about, you know, so linen tencel, Eco Vero, which is like a tencel, closed loop bamboo and cupro and corn, which are some of the fabrics which I stock. Eco Vero is something that a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's basically another type of wood pulp that's a bit like tencel. Slide, please. So part of my mission for Bond is a bit like Zero Waste Design Online, is to create a bit more education and kind of open the doors a bit to, you know, inviting people to learn more about the basics, and, you know, just, you know, allow people to learn from the very core of what we're trying to achieve. So I've got bits on the website about weave structures, and also the fibers themselves. So we talk so much about the fabrics, but we don't talk about the fibers. And I'm really passionate about, you know, letting people, you know, giving people a springboard to learning more about, you know, just where the fibers are grown, where they're cultivated, you know, the people that are behind them, and the countries that, you know, people come to me in Scotland and say, oh, like, where can I buy, you know, cotton that's, you know, grown in Scotland? And I'm like, it's not grown in Scotland. You know, it can't, you know. So there's people that are wanting this information, and it's not it's readily available when you know where to look. So I just wanted to create a little bit of extra information on the website. Slide maybe, yeah. So part of my mission, again, is to not, you know, greenwash people. I'm on a huge learning curve with Bond. I'm learning so much every day. and it is just like, I'm on a journey with you and you're on a journey with me, and the more people that know more, the better. So talking more about fibers, so it's estimated that 1/3 of all textile fiber gets used for the fashion industry. So textile fiber, you know, coming from plants and animal sources, and you know, not going into interiors, not going into all the other things that it's used for, but like just text, you know, just the fashion industry, it's a huge amount of, so things that are wasted are, you know, fibers that don't meet the grade. So yeah, so I mean, 1/3 of the fiber is 1/3 of a third of textile fiber goes into fashion, but obviously so much of that fiber is wasted in everything from the raw materials, the yarn and the cloth. 47% is a staggering amount, which I'm sure there's conflicting statistics out there. This is the most recent one I found. But yeah, so it's, you know, it's not just the fabric, it's you know, it's the process before the fabric, it's the yarn, it's the raw materials, and obviously it's so much more. It's, you know, minerals for dyes, and slide, if you like, is just a little bit about water. Like, so much water is wasted. So, you know, I'm trying to provide a, you know, a bit like yourselves, provide a bit more information for everyone, just to create some awareness. I mean, it's, you buy the cloth, you know, and yes, there's waste from that, but you know, it's really worth remembering that there's so much more waste involved in, you know, what we enjoy as a pastime or a career. And to give people, you know, and it's not a shaming, it's just, the more we're aware, the more we'll consider, you know, what we buy, and you know, just how much, you know, it's important that we really realize how valuable the textile that we're, you know, buying and using is, because you know, it is damaging. So no matter how much people talk about sustainability, and you know, everything has an impact. Like, you know, it might make you feel better, but it's still cutting down trees, it is still, you know, producing, like, it's overproducing. So I find as a business, it's a fine line between, you know, trying to grow a sustainable practice and business, selling fabric, trying to sell, you know, the right, you know, like fabrics that are less harmful to the environment, less wasteful, but also trying to strike the balance between, like, not encouraging people to overbuy or overspend, or so things like that. So what I haven't done yet is stock any patterns, and that is something that I'm really keen to grow into, and to, you know, like our other speakers have said, like, go down the route of being completely inclusive, and you know, finding those zero waste patterns to help people to make full use of the fabrics that they might buy or use. So, you know, it's staggering, the patterns that are made today, how much waste is involved. So, and the fabrics that I sell, you know, they have a slightly higher price point, and I don't want any ounce of that to go to waste. So what's the next slide, please, Cassandra? Yes, so this is the last slide, and I've missed so many points that I wanted to make, but we can go back. So basically, on a last point, so the fabric shop is online for now, and next month, well, in May, I'll be opening a store in Glasgow, and with that, I'm looking for ways and opportunities to help kind of slow down this waste that we're being overly wasteful. And so I've teamed up with, just to begin with, teamed up with Mara Gang. So they're Mara Gang on Instagram, but Mara is a small fashion brand here in Glasgow, and they are making garments from patchwork garments from sweatshirt fabrics, but they're also expanding into outerwear, and they have teamed. So basically, I'm going to have like a scraps bank, so the tiniest of scraps from people's home sewing. So we know that there's even threads or selvage edges, but even if they are bigger scraps and they're not usable, I'll have a small little bank in the shop for people to drop their scraps into. And Mara are going to come along, and they have teamed up with a place in Manchester who will shred all of these waste, and that shredded material will go into the padding of their outerwear for their, and it could be this winter or next winter, but they're in kind of, they're looking to find way, and I think they've been about a year trying to find the right people to work with them. So we want to be able to support them and possibly, be able to support other small brands doing the same things. But yeah, always looking, I'm looking for ways. So if anyone has any ideas of how we can do more things like that and help small businesses out, and I don't know, yeah, that's what we're doing. So currently in the process of getting the keys next week, and currently running a Kickstarter, which 2 days ago hit the target. So that's all very good and promising. And it's, trying to open a small shop on a budget is very difficult. But yes, that's where I'm at. I have missed so many points that I wanted to make. But thank you.
It's been great. Thanks so much, Bevan. It's just really great to get your perspective, and it's really great to invite the community to try and provide ideas or ways of working with waste again. So please feel free. We'll maybe stick Bevan's details in the chat as well, or we'll provide it through Slack if you have any ideas or wanted to collaborate or anything with Bevan. Yeah. We really invite you to do that. So great. We are running a little bit late, but that's okay. Everything has been really great, and it's been lovely to hear from the first 3 presenters. But just to let you know, it is 8 o'clock now. If you do need to go for any reason, this will be recorded, and you will be able to watch the rest of it once it's live. But if you're able to stay with us, we'd love for you to join us as well. But I'm going to invite Birgitta Helmersson now to join us. And Birgitta, if I am not getting your name right, please obviously correct me. But yes, welcome, Birgitta.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Great.
Good. I came in a bit late here, so yes. Hi. Shall I just begin, or?
Yes. Great.
Yeah, I've missed a lot of the beginning, so but it sounded great. Yeah, what I saw so far. So I'm Birgitta. I have a clothing label based in Sweden. Malmö, Sweden. We have a store which my partner and I run together, called Helgros Studios, and from there we have 2 labels, the Helgros unisex clothing and my own Birgitta Helmersson clothing, and we work with a zero waste production model. So that's just a decision we made at the very beginning of starting our store, that we wanted to begin with that foundation. I'm just going to backtrack a bit and just talk about my background. So I actually am from Australia originally. My father's Swedish, which is why I'm in Sweden now. It's a bit of a long story, but so I basically grew up in Sweden, and I've only been here now for 3 years. In Australia, been here in Sweden for 3 years. So I started sewing quite young. When I was about 12, I always wanted to make clothes and design my own clothes. So initially I was self-trained or self-taught. And then when I left school, I didn't actually go through the path of studying fashion. Instead, I worked my way up. So I started in like an embroidery workshop with these big embroidery machines. Then I went to doing clothing alterations, and then from there I worked in costume for theatre, and then moved into working in women's wear as an assistant designer, and it was a local label in Melbourne, and so I had experience with production as well, which is where I started to get interested in the amount of waste that was created. So next slide, please, and I'll see if I can, hopefully I stay on task here. So basically, I founded my label Birgitta Helmersson in Melbourne in 2012, and then we've had a little store there for a couple of years before we moved to Sweden. And now that we are in Sweden, so in 2018, we set up a store again here, a very small store. So we make everything in-house. We have a zero waste production model, and we work with both organic cottons and European linens, and also we source a lot of vintage and secondhand fabrics, which we upcycle. Next slide, please. So I'll focus now more on the zero waste garments and patterns. Up until the beginning of last year of 2020, we were only selling clothing, ready-made clothing. And we had started working on an idea of doing patterns, for sewing patterns. And one of the reasons is definitely the sustainability aspect of it. But I think a big thing for us was, you know, sustainable clothing is expensive and not everyone can afford that. And we started getting a few requests from some of our customers if we could do patterns. And so it felt like a really great way to give our customers the option to buy the ready-made garment, or they can buy the pattern and they can make it themselves. And I think firstly, it gives you the cheaper option, so you can get that designed garment and make it, but also it shows, especially new sewers, the time it takes to make something, and it sort of helps you to, I guess, understand why things cost the way what they do, and what, you know, they really, a lot of things are far too cheap nowadays, but I think obviously still needs to be affordable. So next slide, please. I just want to talk about, so in the studio, we work with this zero waste production model. So some of the examples of that are, so the zero waste patterns, which I brought up before, and that's under the Birgitta Helmersson range. And then we also use all of our offcuts and remnants. As a side note, I will say when we first decided to do a zero waste production model, it was very challenging in the beginning because obviously we've made this commitment to use every single piece of fabric. And if you're not doing all zero waste patterns, that can be very tricky. But over time, we've been doing this now for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, and it's getting easier. So we do patchwork garments from a lot of our offcuts and remnants. Next slide. We also had a project where we brought in my grandmother's loom. So my father's side is Swedish. This is my Swedish grandmother. And in Sweden, there's a big history with weaving. And so there was this beautiful old loom in my family's farm. So we brought that into the shop and got a local artist on board in Malmö to help us. Basically, we took all the small scraps and we cut them up and rolled them into balls and wove rugs from them. That was a really awesome project, but very time consuming. But it was great, you know, use that process, and I hope that we can do that again. Next slide. I'm not sure if I'm running over time here. Okay, so so going into a little bit of my design process, which I've sort of gone through some of those sort of things before. Why the zero waste patterns is an option to buy our garments or to make it yourself. And I think also the method that we've been using, they're predominantly paperless patterns, which means that you don't have to do a lot of printing, which makes them very accessible to a lot of people. You know, a lot of patterns at the moment, you have to print so many pages and stick them together, and it's really complicated and quite overwhelming, I think, for beginners as well. So really want to work on that aspect of it. And that's very important when I'm designing my patterns. So I try to use small templates and things to accompany instructions and diagrams so that it becomes quite simplified, or as simplified as possible. And I think I just really like to spread my knowledge and show people an alternative way of making. And I think it's also been great to expose the wastefulness of the industry. There's been so many people who have used these patterns and have said it's like a light bulb moment. They didn't realize what they were wasting before, or that they could work this way. So that's been really cool, really exciting. And also personally, outside of a sustainability aspect, I actually really enjoy working within these confines. I think it's technically challenging, and sticking to a certain, if I say it can only be zero waste, then I do think outside of the square and I'm more innovative in the way that I work, rather than feeling like it's, restricting me. Next slide. So just a little bit into just how I work in a real sense. So I really work very hands-on. And I always start first with hand-drawn pattern layouts, and sometimes testing. You can see on the left here, testing with small-scale samples, and partly that's just to not waste too much fabric, because otherwise I'm just toiling and doing so many things. But I think there's a lot of shapes that I've been doing this on and off for about 8 years, exploring zero waste cutting, and I've sort of developed a lot of shapes that I really like and I'm really happy with. And so I kind of expand on those and work with those a lot. And really for me, I love focusing on making them actually as minimal as possible and as simple as possible. But the proportions are very important. And also finding ways to make the finishes simple, but still effective so that they're well made and they look beautiful. Next slide, please. So once I've done my initial ideas and figuring out what patterns I want to do, I make up my final patterns with a mixture of hand drawing and digital layouts. I think I only really do the hand drawing because I don't want to lose that hand done aspect of it for myself, because that's just how I feel more comfortable working. And it's quite a process. And I'm sure anyone who has developed patterns before, even though it looks like simple blocks and, rectangles or shapes, the whole process of working out the cutting steps, the sewing steps, especially for maybe finishes that aren't typical, it's sometimes difficult to find a way to really explain those clearly. So it's a work in progress, but I think I'm getting better at it as I go. Next slide. I hope I haven't missed anything here. Now just coming up to the end. So one thing which I really, until we released these patterns early last year, I didn't realize how amazing the online sewing community is. I wasn't aware that it actually existed, because before this we were really selling ready-made garments and we weren't interacting with home sewers actually. And so it's been a really exciting and amazing experience for me, seeing the response to what we're doing, and also just how alive and yeah, this online community, you share information. It's very genuine. There's a lot of tips and people discussing the changes they make on patterns, and everyone seems just very, very excited to learn, and it's very inspiring. And I think as well, working on zero waste patterns for quite some time, really in the last couple of years, it's the first time I've seen the general public or the home sewing community actually understand what it is. You don't actually have to explain it to people right now. It's really kind of taking off, and that's really exciting too. So exploring further resources, you can do a lot of research through Insta, online. There's a lot of tutorials out there, and there's just a couple of examples here, but people, they will take hashtags for each pattern. So for ours, the zero waste gather dress, you can just, look it up and see all these amazing makes on Insta. And then we also have extra tutorials on our site for the patterns. And there's so many others you can find from other amazing indie pattern companies, etc. So yes, but that's it. I hope I didn't miss anything.
Great. Thank you so much, Birgitta. I don't know if you saw, I'm wearing one of your tops. I made it over the weekend.
Oh, yes. Amazing. Very nice.
Yeah. So it's lovely to see your process and just learn more about your work. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you. No worries. It was my pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to invite Ellie next, and Ellie is a home sewer who's going to share a bit about her process of making a zero waste pattern. So Ellie, please join us.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm Ellie. I'm connected from Berkeley, California, where I live currently, but I'm French. So just in case you're wondering about my funny accent or the grammar mistakes, you have the answer. So Cassandra invited me today to talk about my experience in making zero waste garments, where I started and how I found the process of making. So the starting point comes from my everyday life. I know that everything that I make have an impact on the planet. I recycle, I question my buying choices, I try to consume less things, but in terms of sewing, even though I'm very mindful about what I make, I plan for it, I buy the best fabric I can afford, I try to stay away from fast sewing. I'm just a human being, and that's why I use try, because sometimes I just fail. But yes, in terms of sewing, I didn't really think through about waste since recently. Being frustrated about scrunchies and pouches pushed me to see if it was possible to still being creative, but creating less waste. I made researches online and I found some resources, and I discovered the collective patterns, and I signed up for a workshop. Mylène managed to spark my interest, and I decided to try one of her design, the Act trousers. Next, please. So I choose Mylène Act trousers because I love the style. I was familiar with pen construction, and I also really liked that a sew along was available on YouTube. It's a way to demystify the process, and as a visual learner, it's easier for me to see hands working on a screen with the written instruction, with video instead of following written instruction or two-dimension sketches. Those are totally fine. I'm able to follow them, but like I said, as a visual learner, it demystifies everything, and I really appreciate that the designer takes the time and the effort to create those type of content for us to tackle something for the first time more deeply. What I especially like about this, it's the fit. I was pleasantly surprised to have a garment with a shape, not baggy at all, that I can wear outside. And for a first attempt, I was really pleased, and I also love the details and the finishing. For example, on the inside, you have bias tape to finish the waistband, and you have really nice pockets. I also know that some will argue that it's not the most sustainable option to print a pattern, but I actually love it because it's, again, a huge help to visualize how the pieces work together. When I began this pattern, I knew since the beginning that it will be easy to hack or make different design choices without many toil iteration. Sorry, next please. What I've learned from this experience is really thinking out of the box. I discovered that a crotch cutout can become a pocket, a strip of fabric, a binding, a triangle, a facing. It was incredible. I really love the ingenuity of zero waste designer and the way that they construct the conventional pattern construction. And I think it's not just reserved to zero waste design. Some ideas can be incorporated to conventional patterns as well. That's why I found it very, very fascinating. I also had the chance to test for Emily. I'm wearing her pattern right now. And I was amazed by the possibility available with fabric rectangles. And now I'm really looking forward for next patterns and to learn more about zero waste design. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Ellie. Ellie's got a lot of really lovely makes on her Instagram page as well. I love kind of looking through everything you've made, and it's lovely to hear you speak. But if you're interested, you can follow her at Ellie, at Slow Sewed. That's Ellie. So, and again, we'll share all those resources as well. Thank you so much for sharing, Ellie. Okay, so this is the bit where we ask you all to take a photo, because we really want to celebrate our community and be able to kind of share this wonderful community with the world. So if you don't want to be in the picture, that's totally fine. Just take your video off. And actually, Mylène, I'm going to ask you to take the photograph, because I've got the view where I'm not seeing everyone on my screen, Mylène. So if that's okay, you can kind of take the full gallery view and let me know when we have a photograph taken, so we can move on to the next slide.
No, I actually, I have display issues tonight on my screen, so
I can take screenshots if you want.
Amazing. This is what's incredible about having 4 people working together in a collective.
Okay, everybody smile. I have to go through every page, so keep smiling for a minute. It's amazing that there are so many of you. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay, almost there. Okay, we're good.
Thank you, Danielle. Save the day. Yeah. Great. Okay, so that is the kind of main presentation finished. As we said, we're about 20 minutes over at the moment, but we are going to continue on. If you're interested in continuing with us, first of all, we really would love to hear suggestions for our next community call. We are going to endeavor to run these every couple of months or so. A lot of work goes into planning these events. And we're actually also interested, on that note, to have you kind of partner with us and host future calls. So if anyone on this call has a topic or an interest in actually hosting a call, please get in touch with us, and we'd love to talk to you. So our email address is there, ZWDO collective@gmail.com. Get in touch. Also, the one thing I forgot to mention as well is that in developing our own sewing patterns for Zero Waste Design Online, we will need pattern testers. So if you are interested in testing our patterns, which entails us sending you the pattern once it's ready and you basically making it up and giving us feedback on the fit and the sewing instructions so that we can make the best patterns possible. Again, please contact us at our email address and let us know, and we'll add you to our list, and we'll contact you when our first pattern is ready. So, for this kind of bonus bit, the community call, we're going to have a kind of show and tell and Q&A. So this next bit, we're just going to invite you, the audience, to come and ask us questions. Then Mylène's going to just walk us through our new Slack channel and how you can take part in it and communicate, and kind of just how to actually use it. I'm going to tell you just briefly about an event that I'm hosting next week with Sustainable Fashion Scotland, if it may be of interest to you. And then also we'll just look at a couple zero waste indie sewing patterns that you might be interested in sewing. So, show and tell, yay. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, you can also put them in the chat. You don't have to share, but just remember if you want to ask a question, just unmute and maybe kind of just say hello. We'll just try and kind of manage not too many people talking over each other. But yeah, if you'd like to show us a garment you've made, zero waste, or have a question, Now is your time. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Bonsoir. Bonsoir, Mylène.
Bonsoir.
Hi, I just wrote a question for you actually in the chat.
Yeah, I was about to answer. Yeah.
About your trouser patterns. I'm about to try sewing them on the table at the moment. But yeah, talking about size earlier, I wondered if you could perhaps think about how to accommodate the pattern for slightly bigger sizes, because you only go to size 42, the French or European size 42, which is I'm just a little bit bigger, and given what Kim said earlier, I wondered if you had any ideas.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the first pattern I released like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was difficult at that time for me, because I was starting the waist also, and my base size was my actual size. But this is something I really want to consider in the next patterns, and I would have to spend time again on each pattern on my website to improve them. And so I really want to, and this is something we have been discussing with Cassandra, how we could improve the patterns so they are more size inclusive. So we want to work on it. It's just we are running out of time, but we're gonna do it. Yeah. Or at least if I'm not providing the pattern itself, as you said, trying to provide some information to adapt the pattern would be a good starting point, at least.
Perfect. Thank you. Merci.
Avec plaisir.
Is there any other questions in the chat at the moment, or anyone can just feel free to speak up?
Someone's asking about the spiral trouser and the knee darts and waist darts and orientation for the pocket. In terms of the pocket, the way that I tend to do it, just because it seems to fit the hand more naturally, I put the part of the pocket that would come from the center front. So that side goes kind of closer to the center front, and then the kind of the angle that would be the center back kind of wraps around the side. In terms of the darts, you can do them however you like. The original Make Use spiral trouser was it was cut and overlapped, but that was purely an aesthetic decision. Like that wasn't, I mean, in terms of a strong dart, that's not the best way to do it. It was kind of done for arbitrary reasons that have got nothing to do with, a good way to sew a dart. So I would just sew them as a regular dart, fold it, stitch the line.
Hi, that's my question.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, I was wondering because I was looking at the one where you have a very nice printed fabric on your Instagram page, and it looks like you have triangle that looks like darts near the knee, and some come from the sides, well, the spiral, the side seam, and some are sort of inside the triangle, and maybe I'm overinterpreting, or maybe it's just a motif. So, but I was wondering if it's like because if I put a knee dart, then my ankle gets fitted, and if I don't put a knee dart, then my ankle doesn't go through the trousers. At least with the dimensions that seem to work for the rest of my body.
Right.
So yeah, I was wondering if there was like any kind of fitting need with darts, or how to make them fit well, or if it's just pin and see what goes.
Yeah, the spiral trouser are a deceptively simple, complex pattern.
Definitely, but it's amazing though. It's mind-blowing, but
it's a crazy little puzzle. And what it kind of means is that like to get the right fit, unless you use something like Close 3D, which instantly gives you direct feedback about the proportion of the diagonal line compared to the straight line, which is what gives you a lot of the information to do with fit on the leg. Then it can be like definitely a trial and error thing. It's really interesting. People are really keen on the pattern and want us to develop that as a pattern, and I think that'll help. But in the meantime, so the knee dart, the way that I usually do it is it doesn't go into a seam at all. It's like a fish dart that you would have going into the waist of a dress. And so the widest part of that dart, which on a dress would be at the waist, and it would taper to the bust and to the hip. The widest part goes at the back of the knee, and then it goes up towards the butt and down towards the calf. And
I see.
It shouldn't change the length of the main seam that you sew.
Yes.
That should stay the same. So so that's how I use that dart behind the knee, so that you can kind of pull it in around the knee, so it's not a straight fit. It's more kind of curved to your leg.
Okay, so yeah, that's another great possibility. Thank you. I'm gonna try that as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is there any other chats in the or sorry, any questions in the chat?
There's quite a few. I'm just going backwards.
I'm a designer. I don't know. I have something I could share, if that's okay.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah, we'd love to
All
see
right.
it.
All right. So I'm Sarah. I'm from Bambini del Mare, from the Bay Area. And it was kind of accidental. I've always been very conscious about fashion, and it's always been on my mind, but I created a zero waste pattern. And then I didn't realize that I accidentally created a second one. Accidentally, intentionally, you know, I wanted to use the scraps, but this is I don't know if people can see, this is the zero waste poncho, which ultimately is rectangles, right? So it's just a big 58-inch width of fabric that is one rectangle and then two rectangles finished with bias. And I love it because our beaches are very cold. So I just throw it on and I'm really, really warm. And then the second one is on my form. You guys can see me, right?
Yeah, we can see you.
I hide self-view, so I never see myself, so I don't know. You're gonna have to excuse, she's not so modest, but it's this skirt pattern, and it's called the Talma summer skirt, and it's got actually like a bow tie detail. This is my second one. My first one was white, but it ties in a bow, and it's got this gathered ruffle. And this was actually the one that was accidental. I was just working on it, but the waist from the pattern is like 2 handfuls of scraps. Like that's it from the hip curve. And yes, I'd say that's definitely the one I'm most proud of. But I think for some people, it's like, you know, how is it feasible? How is it fashionable? But it's really quite simple when you think about if you're a child and, you know, you're playing with Legos and you're putting things together. It's ultimately just piecing things together and seeing where it goes. So I always recommend you explore and see what happens. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just fun. The puzzle piece kind of element of zero waste design I find really fun as well. But it's so nice. So are you going to develop Is that like zero waste patterns you're making for, or zero waste garments you're making for yourself, or do you want to develop them into a pattern, or?
Oh, they're available now. So I have 4 patterns out now, and 2 are zero waste and 2 are not. But what my big thing that I encourage is, like, don't throw away your scraps. I kind of am shocked people throw away scraps. Save your scraps. And, you know, whether you're creating like a patchwork top or whether you're stuffing a pillow, there's always a use for scraps. So you want to keep those. So yeah.
Yeah. And I had hoped to kind of share a bit more of the kind of scrap busting methods that we used today, but my presentation was already getting quite long. So that's something that I plan to share probably through our Instagram platform, or maybe through a workshop in the future. But if you have any kind of scrap busting ideas as well, like, please share with us, because we'd love to just kind of collate all that information and bring it all together, as we talked about, like bringing all this knowledge together. So yeah. And what was your name? Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Yeah, my name's Sarah, and I'll drop my website. It's Bambini del Mare. It's Italian.
Perfect. Yeah, pop it into the chat so people can check you out. Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I think probably we'll take one more question, just because we're running over at the moment, and then we'll kind of go through the chats and try and maybe answer those questions through our Instagram page over the next couple of days.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Umeshwari, and I'm a budding fashion designer. And recently, I'm trying to apply for this sustainable fashion design contest called Redress. And I was trying to design zero waste collection. And in some of my designs, I wanted to use a lining. So I was wondering, how do you make a zero waste lining for a fabric? Like, do you make the same size pattern, or how do you give a lining to the fabric?
So you're basically creating your zero waste pattern for your outer garment, and then you're wanting to know how to make the lining, so the inner pattern pieces zero waste. Yeah. I mean, if I was approaching it, it would be to integrate those lining pattern pieces into the pattern. It would depend on how you're going about making your zero waste and what those shapes are. But I mean, Danielle or Holly, Mylène, I'm sure you can maybe comment on that as well.
Yeah, when I've done it, the way that I've approached it depends on the garment, but like the kinds of garments that I often line are like jackets and coats. And one of the really useful things about the kinds of materials that you use for coats and the lining fabrics is that they tend to be different widths, and you can kind of use that to your advantage. So if you're making a coat, for example, and you're using, some kind of beautiful wool or something, then that's usually, in my experience, it's wider than the fabric that you would use to line that coat with. And when you make a coat of any kind with a lining, normally what you need is a facing at the opening. And so what you can kind of calculate is use the difference in width between the shell fabric, the outer fabric, and the lining fabric to give you that center frontal, that opening facing, and then the remainder of the pattern basically stays the same, and it accounts for the difference in width. That's how I've approached it.
Okay, so you basically make the same size pattern, but give it a little seam allowance, like a little more, like 1 or 2 inches wider than the original pattern. Do you mean?
So if like normally with a shell fabric, it's like maybe 140 centimeters wide, whereas a lining might be 110. And so there's a difference there of 30 centimeters. And so that gives you, if you divide that 30 centimeters by 2, then you end up with like a center front facing that you can use. That's about 15 centimeters wide on each side. Obviously, that will depend entirely on the fabrics you've chosen, what lining fabric it is, and what the shell is, and also what the design is. But that's one way I've done it. The easiest way to do it is to just have your shell fabric and your lining fabric the same width, and then cut two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
That's actually what I did for those. I talked about the zero waste patchwork dresses. I did the same thing. I just cut the lining out of the exact same pattern piece and then lined it. So that, yeah, that works quite well. Great. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to move on to the next bit so we can at least finish by 9, which is still running over quite a bit. But thanks for your patience, everyone. And like I said, we'll try and answer some of your questions in the coming days. If you do have a question, I don't know if you have like an Instagram account and you want to put your question back in the chat with your Instagram handle or an email address so that we know how to contact you and answer those questions, that would be great, just so in case we can't kind of directly locate your name and way to contact you. I'm going to invite Mylène to talk about our Slack channel now. And Mylène, are you going to share your screen as well, I think?
Yeah, so what we wanted to bring up to the table is the fact that we are discussing about a lot of things and there are a lot of questions, and, but it missed kind of a place to discuss. So we thought it could be great to have a forum to discuss. And so we have created a Slack. So for those who don't know Slack, it's an easy tool where you have channels and you can create topic channels and you can discuss in this channel. So I'm going to share with you my screen to show you how it works quickly. Here we go. So this is the interface of Slack. So we have created a workspace for a zero waste design online community. And in this environment, you can both have conversation with the community, like it's public in the community, or you can also use the direct messages to contact someone directly in the community. So here on the left, you have all the channels that we have created. So for example, the first one is introduce yourself. So if you want to share a presentation of you, what you're doing, your website, or just say hello, where you come from. And then we have like a general conversation where you can just discuss about zero waste design in general. And then we have created, like for example, this channel is community call. So I've just shared the image of the community call. So you can use that channel, to have a follow-up. For example, I thought it could be great to, for the question that haven't been answered yet, we could answer them in the chat afterwards.
I was kind of laughing at myself because this is obviously the solution to the very thing I was saying. So yes, you can use the Slack channel to answer your questions.
Yeah, because we are not very active, like we are active on Instagram, but it's not always easy to answer private messages since we are quite busy. And the thing is that sometimes when we answer question, it could be useful for other members of the community, and sometimes we don't have the answer, but potentially other people have the answer. So, it's all about sharing and having a common place where you can look at questions and see answers, or share patterns and resources or whatever. So yeah, that's how it works. And what I wanted to mention is that if you're not interested in all those channels, you can just right-click on it and mute the channel or leave the channel. It's not mandatory to be in all of them. And another important point is that you can turn off the notification on each channel. For example, this one, academic resources. If I'm not interested in this channel, I can just right-click and then change the notification. And so I can select if I want to get a notification for every message or just when I am mentioned or nothing. So these are the kind of the basic options that you have in the forum. So you can share different files like PDF or even videos, images, and when you are talking with someone, you can use the to mention someone in the community, and also you can use the hashtag to kind of categorize the topic as well in the channel. I think that's pretty much it for beginning.
There is a clamoring for the link.
Sure, I'm gonna share it.
Cool,
so
thanks.
first I stop sharing, and the link is here we go. Here it is. Oh, it was a direct message to someone. I'm gonna share it with everyone. Here we go. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mylène.
And of course, if you don't know Slack and you want to have more information, there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube, and we're gonna share some as well, just to have the a start guide.
Amazing. Thanks so much. So yeah, so join our Slack group and we will do our best to answer all of your questions and yeah, just create a lovely community. So next thing I just wanted to mention, it's maybe a little off topic, but I just think it may be interesting to home sewers. If you've not heard of this book, Folk Fashion, Understanding Homemade Clothes by Amy Twigger Holroyd, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's kind of just looking at our relationship with our clothing. It's looking at kind of sustainability. Yeah, there's lots of really important information in this book. It's a really great read. I'm actually hosting a book club next Wednesday, March 17th, on this book, and Amy is going to be joining us for the call as well. You're welcome to join. It is through Sustainable Fashion Scotland, which focuses on Scotland, but anyone is welcome to join the book club if you have. If you want to just kind of join the conversation, if you've not read the book, that's fine. Amy also has, if you just search for her name, she has a video that you can watch through her or through her website, which talks a bit more about the book, which is I think maybe about half an hour, which you could watch that and come along. Yeah, so if you go to Sustainable Fashion Scotland at SUSFash Scotland, there's information there if you're interested in signing up for the book club, and I'll be hosting that again next Wednesday. And then we mentioned we wanted to talk about the Socialist, and their Zero Waste Sewing Month, which just ended. We were so excited to see this activity. There's lots of different articles written about different kind of approaches to zero waste. The article that Kim mentioned that she wrote, Zero Waste Sewing, Piecing Together and Solving Sizing Challenges. There's one about scrap busting, there's one about patchwork. And so we'll pop the link to the Socialist website into the chat just now, and also you can follow them on Instagram. So yeah, that's the Socialists. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about some indie zero waste patterns, zero waste sewing patterns. And to start with, we wanted to mention Liz Haywood, who is the author of Zero Waste Sewing, 16 Projects to Make, Wear, and Enjoy. And this just shows the content page a little bit, some of the different garments. And this shows, how many is there? 9, 18, about 18 then, no, I'm not counting that correctly. There's lots of patterns there. Lots of lovely makes as well, obviously, that you can check out on Instagram. And Liz also spoke at our second community call, which is on our website. And again, maybe we can just pop that into the chat. On our events page, you can kind of scroll down to the bottom and see our previous community calls. This one was slightly more kind of focused on designer making processes, but Liz Haywood talked about her process. So we would have had her join this call, but because she had already done that for our previous call, you can either watch the call or you can visit our Instagram page, and we have the full video on our Instagram page as well. Ooh, I'm playing the, okay, so.
Hello everyone, I'm Liz Haywood and I'm.
I need to go to the next page without.
Hello everyone.
Mylène, how do I go to the next page without playing the video?
I don't know.
Oh, there we go, got it, woo, okay. Often have technology backup from Mylène and Holly and Danielle. Okay, so these are just some examples of some of garments that have been made from Liz Haywood's book. So lovely garments by the maker community. Next we have Thread Faction Studio, which is all zero waste sewing patterns for children. So if you're interested in making children's zero waste garments, you can check out Thread Faction. Obviously, we talked about Birgitta Helmersson tonight, and these are some makes we can kind of see a bit closer up now as well from the maker community. And we've got the Maynard dress from Alba Textiles, and we recently, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on our Instagram, did a post where one of our members of our community, Lady Foley Sews, I think is her Instagram name, and she took on a challenge to wear the Maynard dress every day for 30 days and just kind of style it differently every day. And it's a really cool kind of challenge she took on, and you can kind of see some of the different styles, I guess, or that she made up during that competition, or sorry, challenge. So yeah, visit our Instagram page to check that out, or you can check her out at Lady Foley Sews. And then we have Mylène and some of the garments that have been made. So these trousers are ones here that were Ellie was talking about. There's 2 kind of examples there. And you can check out Mylène's at her website there as well. And then we've got Chris Wood Sews and her envelope dress or top. So it can be made as either end. That's really cute, lovely little one that you can make for children as well, adaptable pattern. So, oh, last slide. So Maya Stabile has also been making zero waste garments for a long time. She was featured as a designer in Zero Waste Fashion Design book that Holly wrote with Timo Rissanen, and she has sewing patterns, and she's run sewing workshops as well for her zero waste design or for her zero waste patterns. So you can check her out at mayastabile.no. Okay, that's the end. That is the end. We are 10 to 9, amazing. So yeah, like I said, if you have any suggestions for future community calls, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining this call. It's so lovely to connect with all of you. And we hope to see you again. And on the Slack channel, we'll see you there. So great.